In 1933, Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany. Following the Reichstag fire and the Night of Long Knives, the Nazis came to power. Of course, what if that didn't happen? What if Hitler was shot and killed in World War I, and in that void arose Ernst Thalmann? Now you must be thinking, who is Ernst Thalmann? Thalmann was the leader of the KPD, or Communist Party of Germany, who pretty much thought that Nazism was a lesser threat than the Weimar democracy. His party campaigned against Nazism and German conservatism. However, he did accurately claim that a vote for Hitler would lead to war. In our timeline, the Nazis arose to power with them eliminating all possible rivals, including Thalmann. In this timeline, let's assume that without a centralized right wing party, the KPD gained enough followers to form an effective government while ensuring that the SPD, moderate, and centrist parties are too powerless to oppose them. Immediately, you'd likely see a communist night of long knives, as Stalin centralizes power for himself and institute a one-party state. So, what now? Remember those right-wing parties? Stalin already had an assassination attempt on him in 1922 by the ultranationalist organization Council, but if he did get into power, is likely to see these groups launch more assassination attempts on him. In response, Thalmann would launch another purge to remove the opposition under emergency power, possibly even send fire to the Reichstag to justify this response. He would possibly establish a gulag system to deal with quote unquote enemies of the state. While we weren't sure what Thalmann would do economically, we do know he was a big fan of Stalin, often referring to him in private correspondence. As such, he would undoubtedly attempt to influence mass collectivization and a similarly styled industrial 5-year plan. The consequences would be severe. You'd see mass starvation, civil unrest, and increased assassination attempts on him. In our timeline, Thalmann was executed on August 23, 1944, in Buchenwald concentration camp on Hitler's personal orders. It was reported that Himmler wrote to Hitler, Thalmann must die. In this timeline, even without a sudden mustache man, Thalmann would have to deal with two threats: civil unrest from various right-wing nationalist groups going underground, and the paranoia of Joseph Stalin. If Thalmann was killed by a right-wing group, the KPD would likely be stunted by the SPD, or Socialist Party of Germany, or possibly replaced by a Hitler-esque figure. If Thalmann was killed by Stalin, it is undoubtedly certain that he would have been replaced by a pro-Soviet agent, as Stalin would have aimed to keep Germany as a puppet state for the Soviet Union. Let's assume that if the KPD were able to recover quickly by selecting a successor, the damage would already be done. Mass civil unrest, uprising, an outright civil war would consume Germany, or it would become a Soviet puppet state for the next generation at the very least. Either way, there was no good path for Germany if Thalmann became Chancellor. But what if Thalmann had survived? Well, don't go thinking he'd create a communist utopia, comrade. As mentioned previously, Thalmann was an avid supporter of Stalin, so while dealing with assassination attempts, he would have to deal with the ever-increasing paranoia of Stalin, who, after the alleged death of Sergei Kirov, would turn his attention to Germany. Stalin would undoubtedly have started cleaning house, and ensure Germany couldn't get strong enough to challenge Moscow. This would leave Germany in a far weaker position than in reality, with the world being far more focused on the threat of communism. But what do you think? Would Thalmann have some sort of falling out with Stalin? Or am I wondering aloud too hard? Like and subscribe, hit the bell icon, and make sure to check out the channel for other content. This is John A. Adler, and I will see you next time.